Hi everyone, welcome back to Farrand Film and to this week's UK and Ireland box office update. This is the 5th of August. I'm actually recording this on the 5th of August. We're quite early afternoon. Managed to get the numbers earlier than we tend to with these box office updates. Last week was quite late. This is the second time I'm recording this video because for whatever reason it decided just to start working and blah 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 blah. So we'll see how well this one goes. So outside of the top 10, films that landed outside the top 10, Fly Me to the Moon crashed out of the top 10. And landed at 15. I Saw the TV Glow drop down to 14. New entry with Kensuke's Kingdom at 13. I thought that would do much better than it did. Rayan at 12. And a new entry of Daru Na Pinda Hove, which is at number 11. So let's get into the top 10. At number 10 is a reissue. It's Hayao Miyazaki's My Neighbor Totoro. Now, I don't recall My Neighbor Totoro getting a full cinematic release when it was originally released. So the gross on screen of just under £70,000 is just from this weekend. I don't know if it did have a release, like I say, but it's done incredibly well for a reissue. I'd imagine there were a lot of people going out seeing it, possibly for the first time on the big screen. So again, that has done well. There are a lot of films this week where the sort of one-offs or the reissues and things like that. And then this coming week with the films that are about to come out, there are 7 new re-releases. Not re-releases, there are 7 new releases next week. So there's going to be so much different stuff to talk about, but we'll get to that when we get to that. At number 9 is Blackpink World Tour Born Pink. Now this was the one that last week I mentioned as a sort of, oh, let's keep an eye on it because it might end up in the top 10. It did. Number 9, just over £93,500 for a gross date of 181. I think the way that one works is the weekend gross takes the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, so that's the 93.5, but then 181 comes from those other days in the week, so it might have had a Wednesday showing or even a Thursday showing, but that's Blackpink World Tour Born Pink at number 9. At number 8, probably its last week in the chart, is A Quiet Place Day 1. It's done well. It's done really well. It's dropped down from number 6. It's 6 weeks in the chart. It got 101 grand at the weekend, just over 9.6 million at the UK box office so far. I reckon it's going to be its last week. Now, usually, if this was a week where there were like 1 or 2 films coming out, I would probably say that this had dropped to 9 or 10, and then that would be its last week, similar to what things like Bike Riders did and Bad Boys Ride or Die. But I reckon this one is just going to fall out of it because, like I say before, there are 7 releases this week that I think are going to bother the box office, or most of them are going to bother the box office anyway, and there's just not room for everything in the top 10. So that's A Quiet Place Day 1 at number 8, 6 weeks in the chart, likely it's last week. And at number 7 is a reissue of 2002 Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. Now, I predicted that it was going to go into the top 10. I think I said number 9. I might have even said number 10. The fact that it landed at 7, massive, right? 250 grand people paid for over the weekend to go and watch a film that, let's face it, yes, it's very good. Yes, I have a lot of affinity for it, but you could probably get it for £1 in Poundland on DVD or CEX. But there's something about watching that web swinger on the big screen that everybody wants to go and see. So, I tell you what, fair play to it, right? Because it's going to carry on, because Spider-Man 2's coming this week, Spider-Man 3's coming the week after, then you've got the Garfield Amazing Spider-Man the week after, and then you've got the Tom Holland ones back again. And I tell you what, people going watching No Way Home again, probably, yeah. Is that going to pip it over 2 bill? Might do. But there you go, Spider-Man at number 7. Longlegs, still proving it's got long legs at the box office, number 6. £570,000 at the weekend, which is phenomenal considering that a film like Maxine, where you would assume that there is a similar audience, okay, Maxine, that 570 grand that Longlegs did this weekend, Maxine could have done with that additionally in like its 2nd week. We're talking about Longlegs in its 4th week in the chart. Now, I know that I've mentioned on here that it didn't quite do it for me, that like the intrigue at the start, if the film was all of that intrigue at the start, I would have been all there for it, right? But to me, it just gets a little bit daft towards the end. But it's an quote-unquote R-rated horror, so 15 rated horror for us in the UK. We don't get these often. They're quite few and far between, and it's done incredibly well for the kind of film that it is, which I don't really like to say, but the kind of film that it is, it's done incredibly well. 6.8 million so far. I am concerned that it's going to be its last week. Now, when I was predicting next week's chart, originally I put it at number 9. I put Longlegs at number 9, but there was a film that I forgot about, which I'm going to mention in a second, which I think, unfortunately, is going to stay around colouring things in. So Longlegs, number 6, might be its last week, which again, saying a film goes from 6 to 10 or 6 to drops out of the chart is a big drop. It's just the amount of stuff that's coming out, and we'll get to that in a little bit. So Longlegs is at 6. At number 5, here he is colouring stuff in. Harold and his purple crayon. Now, 640 grand at the weekend. First week in the chart, a new entry. This ain't staying around long. He's got too much competition with Inside Out and Despicable Me. Never mind anything else that's going to come popping up. And I think I said that this was going to open around about number 5, if not slightly below. Or actually, I think I might have even said higher. So whether this is a success or not, don't know. Yet to be seen. But I reckon he's going to be number 9 next week because of everything else that's coming. And then after that, someone's rubbing out his purple crayon marks. Can you rub out crayon? Who knows? So that's number 5. Number 4, top 4, all the same as last week, all holding strong. These 4 films are doing incredibly well. So number 4, the behemoth that is Inside Out 2. So 52.2 million so far at the UK box office. We know it's number 1. We know it's the highest grossing of the year so far. This is the first week that it hasn't grossed over £1 million. 8 weeks in the chart. That means for 7 weeks, it grossed at least £1 million. This is the first week that it hasn't done. £939,000. So nothing to be sniffing at all, right? That is higher than some of the films that we've already spoken about have done altogether, right? So this is doing incredibly well. It's still got, like I say, about another 3 weeks after the summer holidays where I think it's going to stick around. I think it's still going to see the audiences. I'm still hoping to get out and see it because I've still not seen it yet. And Ruby's doing this thing now where she's like, oh, you know that character from Inside Out 2? You mean the film that you didn't want to go and watch? So hopefully we'll get out and see that fairly soon. At number 3, Twisters, still again doing incredibly well. 1.1 million at the weekend, bringing its total gross of just under 10.2 million. It might start bothering the top 10. If this was a normal week where you were talking about 2 or 3 new releases, I would say that it's going to start bothering the top 10 of the year. But because there are so many, I think it's going to drop down quite significantly. I think it's going to go from around about 3 to about 6 or 7. And then at that point, you're sort of dwindling out. And again, it all comes down to screen space in the cinemas. Like, I know we talk about multiplexes that have got 20-odd screens in them. But if those 20-odd screens are filled with 6 showings of Deadpool and Wolverine because everybody wants to go and see it, there's no space for Twisters when all the other stuff comes out as well. So it all depends on where these things slot in, how many times people can get out and go and see it, what's going to happen in terms of the box office this weekend. So Twisters is holding at number 3. At number 2 is Despicable Me 4. Now, this is its 4th week in the chart. I know that it says 2 there. I forgot to edit it. My bad. But 2.5 million over the weekend, bringing its total gross to 30.8 million, or just over 30.8 million, which is incredibly high as it is. But it's been embarrassed by Deadpool and Wolverine in that if this is fourth week in the chart, right, and it's done 30.8 million, Deadpool, 2nd week in the chart, has already pipped it this year. So number 1, Deadpool and Wolverine, 8 million over the weekend, 33.4 million at the UK box office. Nothing is stopping this right now. And I had to really think about whether or not anything being released this week, like I say, it's a busy week, is going to stop Deadpool and Wolverine. And I don't think there is going to be something. If you take into account that basically the way that the top 10 works is Deadpool grossed 8 million, right? If a film grossed 9 million, that would be number 1 instead. That's as simple as it works. I don't think anything next weekend is going to gross more than Deadpool will do next weekend. Some films might come close. And at this point, in the 3rd week, you would imagine that it's going to drop down to something like 5 million right? It's probably not going to be sticking around the 8 million. So I reckon next week, the 1 and the 2, I reckon 1's going to be Deadpool and Wolverine. I reckon 2's going to be Borderlands. And I reckon Deadpool and Wolverine's going to do around about 6.5 mil. And I reckon Borderlands is going to do 6. It's going to be that close next week. So let's look at predictions from last week. Let's look at the top 10 so far, and then we'll look at these new releases. So predictions from last week. So I said Deadpool and Wolverine would stay at number 1. Despicable Me 4 would stay at 2. Got those 2 right. I said Harold and the Purple Crayon was going to be number 3. That went in at 5. Rubbish. Inside Out 2 at 4. Yes, correct. Twisters at 3. I said would be at 5. So again, got that wrong. Kensuke's Kingdom I said would go in at 6, and it opened at number 13. Bloody hell. Longlegs, I said at 7, it was at 6. Quiet Place Day 1 at 8, got that one correct. Rayan I thought would stick around and do number 9, and it went to 12. And then Spider-Man I said number 10, and instead it went to number 7. Blackpink and My Neighbor Totoro were ones that I didn't mention, ones that I didn't think would actually land in the chart, and obviously they have done. So this week is incredibly tough. So, 2024 top 10. Big change here is that Deadpool and Wolverine is now the 3rd highest grossing film of the UK, in the UK, of the year so far. So Inside Out 2 is still number 1 with 52.2 million. Dune Part 2, 39.4. Deadpool's coming after that one, because Deadpool and Wolverine is 33.4. Despicable Me 4 is now 4th of the year with 30.8. Kung Fu Panda 4, 21.8, and so on and so forth. So again, nothing huge has changed there, apart from the fact that Deadpool's gone up a couple of spaces and knocked Despicable Me down from its 3rd place spot. So, these new releases. Now, usually, because I record this on PowerPoint, right? So I can sort of take you through and show you the pictures, and it's nice, isn't it? Nice graphics. It looks like he's got more skills than he hasn't. He's using PowerPoint. Usually I've got like 2 slides left because it's the last 2 films, right? I'm on slide 14 of 21. I cannot believe when I was going through the release schedule how much stuff is coming out this week. Why they've bundled it all together, I have no idea. But it's about to go off, people. So, Spider-Man 2 is getting reissued this week. So, 2004 Sam Raimi Spider-Man 2. I reckon it's going to go in the top 10, especially the first one did, because arguably this one's the better one. So, yeah. That is what that is. Another new release is a BFI film, a British film called Sky Peels, which is a British science fiction drama directed and written by Moin Hussein in his feature directorial debut. Now, I don't think it's going to land in the top 10. It will be one that I mention next week. I reckon it will land in the top 15. And that mainly stems from the fact that Moin Hussein is going around and doing Q&As, and he's doing sort of live events for the film, screening the film, doing panels and stuff like that afterwards. So I think it's going to pick up some traction there, and hopefully the critics whose columns and podcasts and all that come out by the end of the week are going to give it some sort of word of mouth traction as well. Bluey, the Family Trip Collection, one to mention. Now, this is being distributed by View, but apparently it is also being shown in Odeon cinemas and Cineworld cinemas. Now, this is one of these things that they like to put out at a half-term, where basically someone has just curated a collection of Bluey episodes, Peppa Pig episodes, whatever naff thing it is, stick them all in a bundle, put it on for an hour, and that's it. So there's nothing new here. If your family's into Bluey, there's nothing new here, okay? This is an hour-long treat for Bluey fans to enjoy, made up of 8 episodes of the TV show, okay? So it's just 8 episodes that are already released and out there, and it's on for an hour. Now, these tend to do quite well. They tend to do quite well early morning screenings where parents are off and they just want to take the kids to go and watch something passable, we'll get out of the house, we'll go and do something. So I reckon it might bother the top 10 next week, but not too high up. Duchess, the Neil Marshall film. Now, as I record this, earlier today I recorded my review of Duchess. It's going up on the channel live on Wednesday morning ahead of the release of Duchess on Friday. So I got the chance to see it early. You'll see and hear what I thought about that later on. But slight spoilers for the review. I did say that I don't think it's going to bother the top 10. I still don't think it's going to bother the top 10. It's getting a limited release on Friday in some select UK cinemas, and then on Monday it's going straight to digital download. So I can't imagine that it is actually going to bother the top 10 at all. Possibly in the top 15. Right, now, the big three. So, It Ends With Us, adapted from the Colleen Hoover novel, and Lily overcomes a traumatic childhood to embark on a new life. It's starring Blake Lively. Now, this is one of those films that, especially for the people that have read the book, are going to flock to go and see this. Now, in terms of, I tried to check showtimes of View in Manchester for the films that they're putting on the most over the weekend. Now, they've opened up advanced booking for It Ends With Us, Trap, Borderlands, Spider-Man 2 and Bluey. Okay, Spider-Man 2, Bluey and Trap have all got one screening each. Borderlands has got 4. It Ends With Us has got 6. Now, whether or not that should tell me anything about how well these films are going to do, I have no idea. So I would imagine that this is going to do fairly well, okay? And I'd imagine that between the big three that I'm about to go through, they are interchangeable in where they will end up in the chart next week. But I have made my prediction, and we'll get to that. So that's It Ends With Us, starring Blake Lively. Next big one of the week is Borderlands, that I've already mentioned. So it's based on the best-selling video game. Kate Blanchett, Jack Black, Kevin Hart, Ariana Greenblatt, Jamie Lee Curtis. It's going to do well. I've not actually seen any reviews of this yet. And I did get an invite to the press screening. But the press screening is literally... Is it the day of? I think it is the day of. And that never bodes well. That's when they're going to do it, okay? Now, the whole thing with press screens and me getting to press screenings, all that kind of stuff, is I live in Manchester. All the press screenings happen in London. I love getting the email. I love getting the invite, okay? But I never sort of respond to them because I ain't ever going. I did Dune because it was Dune and I was fanatical about getting a ticket for it. But yeah, there's a concern when it's the day of, if not the day before, because usually that means that they don't want people to pick up the traction of actually this is quite good. I might be totally wrong with that. My hope is, I'm quite busy this week anyway, but my hope is I will try and catch up with this and with Trap possibly on Sunday, but we'll see. So as I've already kind of mentioned, the other film this week is M. Night Shyamalan's Trap. Now, I've been keeping an eye on this since the first time I saw the trailer, because there's something about the concept which I am aware I am going to learn from my mistakes, right? That I have been lulled into a false sense of security before with M. Night Shyamalan films, okay? That the concept is everything, okay? But the execution doesn't always go as planned, or doesn't always sort of come off as well as it could do. So I am going into Trap not thinking that it is going to be one of my favourite films of the year, but actually that it is, and I mean this term with affinity, a bit of a mediocre horror film, okay? Nobody loves a mediocre horror as much as I do. Stick Midnight Meat Train on. I'll watch that all day long, right? It's a 3-star horror film. It's not trying to be anything else. That's all I'm hoping for Trap, okay? And if that is the case, I'll enjoy it. If it's proper naff, I'll tell you about it next week. But, you know, he's a serial killer who takes his daughter to a concert, and then the police come looking for the serial killer. I'm intrigued, okay? So hopefully it's going to do fairly well. So, predictions for next week. I've rambled on enough. So, I reckon Sky, Peels and Duchess are going to open outside of the top 10. I reckon A Quiet Place is going to drop out after 6 weeks. And I reckon Longlegs is going to drop out after 4 weeks. So my top 10 in reverse order. Bluey at the Cinema at number 10. Harold and the Purple Crayon on his way out, colouring as he goes, at number 9. Spider-Man 2 at 8. Twisters at 7. Inside Out 2 at 6. Despicable Me at 4. At 5. It Ends With Us at 4. Trap at 3, Borderlands at 2, and Deadpool and Wolverine at 1. Now, the Trap, Borderlands, It Ends With Us, I'm looking at it now and I am thinking maybe Trap might go underneath, maybe Trap might fall underneath It Ends With Us. The reason why I've put Borderlands at 2 is because I'm fairly certain Borderlands is a 12A certificate, which means that the kids are going to go and see it. I reckon Trap is going to be a 15, or I think it's a 15, and to me it looks more like a couples on a Saturday night going watching something scary, right? And then it ends with us, to use a quote from somebody else, it's going for the silver pound, right? Which means that I think it's the older people that are going to go for it. You know, the coffee and a tea and a biscuit and all that kind of stuff. But then I do also see, to be stereotypical, females who have read the book to be targeted for this. Which I think, in terms of films like this and films like Fault in Our Stars, that's where the key audience seems to be. There was that Emilia, she called Emilia Clarke, the one who was in Game of Thrones, the Me After You thing. That again did incredibly well with people that read the book. So I can imagine that's where that's going to stick in. So you sort of your key three that we've had for a couple of weeks. So Despicable Me 4, Inside Out 2 and Twisters are still staying together, but they're the sort of second half of the chart now. And then these new three of Borderlands, Trapping It and Ends With Us can be sort of moved around a little bit. But I reckon Deadpool and Wolverine is still going to hold strong a little bit there. There's a lot. It's turned into one of them films where I'm seeing stuff on Twitter. Every time I go onto Twitter, it's like someone's managed to record the bye 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 dance at the beginning, and then someone's managed to sort of go in and record all the spoiler cameos, and then they just keep posting them. So then for whatever reason, people are then still going seeing it. It's going to do $1 billion. It's going to do $1 billion next weekend because it's on something like 850 million overall worldwide. So it'll do its $1 billion next weekend. But that's where we are. It's a big week. It's a big week for releases, and I will try and get out and watch Borderlands and watch Trap. Trap is the one that I'm more bothered about. So hopefully by next week I'll be able to tell you what I think about that. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening. I feel like this one's been a much more rambly one. Do apologise. Stay safe, look after each other, and I will see you next week.